Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Why, hello there. Let us all recite the Olympic pledge together. I'm not into it yet, but I usually do get in. And I'm always ambivalent about these over-the-top, often ludicrous opening ceremonies. However, there's always something in there that just wows the hell out of you, and then other things that just seem so embarrassing you can't believe it. I still don't think anyone can beat what the Chinese did, but that's just my opinion. I was showing Jess. Jess and I have already seen some of the opening ceremony, sort of. And, all of this is super, super, super secret. And yet it's hard to keep things secret when there are literally thousands of people who are going to be appearing in the opening ceremonies. And I'm not talking about the athletes. I'm talking about, these huge, huge, huge production numbers that get put on. And so last night I get an email from my niece, my sister's, Susan's daughter, whose friend, Laura, is a marvelous actress, and she's in London, and she's a wonderful, wonderful kid. She actually was with us in Amsterdam, and what fun we had! Anyway, Laura is in the opening ceremony, so she sent out an email, surreptitious pictures of herself in full regalia, and informing us of what number she's in, what song will be going on. She's the one in the orange wig, which you can see in the picture she sent, with the huge swing dress that lights up. And there's 16 other such dresses. So I got somebody I have to be looking for at 1 hour, 15 minutes in the segment which starts with the song My Generation. Look for a giant inflatable house, is that what she said? And after the nurse's number. She said, don't worry, it'll all make sense when you see the nurse's number. Okay, so I'm all excited because someone I know is making her, as she pointed out, her international television debut tonight. However, we don't know if the camera will perchance be on her in the little moment that she might strut her stuff amidst the throngs. But she says this is a totally illegal picture. Here, I'm sending you this picture of me. Look for me. I'm the only one in the orange wig with a swing dress. Because she said anytime anybody during the rehearsals has seen anyone taking a picture, they jump on them and immediately make them delete it. And, that's totally understandable, is it not? But how the hell you can keep anything a secret now when everybody has a little, a camera on their cell phone, I can't imagine. And it is amazing that there is any ability to keep anything secret anymore, especially something like that. Excuse me. Oh, The other thing I just want to mention, and this is a bit of a downer. By the way, hello. It's Friday, July 27th. And but it's Olympics related. It's the refusal of the IOC to mark at the opening ceremonies with a moment of silence the fact that this is the 40th anniversary of the massacre of the Israeli team at the Olympics in Munich. I mean, of all the things that have ever happened at the Olympics, that obviously takes the cake for a total disregard of what the Olympics is about. It is, even though it ends in S, right? What the Olympics is about. And unbelievably, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, has never in an opening ceremony, but this, with the 40th anniversary, that was in 1972, that horrific massacre happened in the Olympic Village and finished up at the Munich airport. And it's bizarre that they won't acknowledge it. Now, they say they don't want to intrude upon the festivities? Well, stop and think of how we stand and honor. And I have said enough's enough already, because I think we never let go. 9/11, when it seems fitting that we remember. And the thing that puts the lie to the IOC's excuses for not doing this is that they did do a moment of silence for that luge athlete who was killed in a crash just hours before the opening ceremony in Vancouver. It was in a practice run. So it's not as though they're not willing to do that. They just won't. Here's why they won't do it. I mean, they won't say it, but everybody knows why. Because Israel, drawing attention to Israel as a victim, is politically incorrect now. Because now the victims, internationally perceived, are the Palestinians. The reality that 40 years ago it was Palestinians who perpetrated this massacre. Somehow this gets lost. I remember at the time, this is how naive I was. I remember at the time saying, how can these people think that by doing something so absolutely, I mean, beyond the scope of any possible excuse. I mean, there's nothing you could say that you go in and murder innocent athletes to make a political statement, to announce to the world your grievance. And I remember saying, how's that supposed to work? You mean they think people are going to be sympathetic with them after what they've done there? Look what they did. And you know what? They were right. I was wrong. It does work. Terrorism works. It worked. That was their MO for decades, and it worked. It got their grievance out there, and all of a sudden turned them from these murderers who defiled the Olympics, who obliterated these totally innocent young men. And now the IOC won't touch it because, of course, Israel, to be perceived, to show Israelis as victims is, come on. Why, some of those Arab countries and some of those European countries will possibly walk out, will cause a stir, so we can't do it. So the only reason there is not a moment commemorating the most horrific thing that ever occurred, the most anti-Olympic thing that ever occurred at an Olympics in its history tonight, the reason there will be no such thing is because of the nationality of the victims of that attack. I can assure you that's the only reason. And it's disgusting to me. At the time it happened, the IOC's reaction was an outrage. I don't know if you recall. The head of the IOC then was this total, disgusting human being named Avery Brundage. Do you remember him, guys? Avery Brundage. You got to be old. He was the most vile human being in the universe. And he actually made a speech after the Olympics in which he referred to guarding against the commercialization of the Olympic ideal and didn't say boo about the fact that there had been this bloodbath. Didn't say anything about politicizing. Didn't say anything about denigrating. He allowed the Olympic flag to be lowered to half-staff for a little while, and most other nations brought theirs down too, although some did not. Again, you don't mourn the death of people you don't consider fully human. My understanding is that some people who feel that this is an outrage, when the head of the IOC, this guy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Raghi, he's a Belgian, I think. When he gets up to speak tonight, some people in the stadium, I guess, are going to stand in protest, stand in silence. And I will it'll be interesting to see if the if the ABC, whoever is doing play-by-play of the Olympic ceremony, notes it. It'll be interesting to see. But you may forget, but that's how the Palestinian cause was first presented to it. That is how most people in the world first found out there was this grievance. And silly me! I thought, you want people to feel sorry for you, and you do that by, slaughtering innocent people and then say, and I want you to feel sorry for me? I couldn't believe it. What a fool I am. Okay, I want to go to the Jordan Miles case, if you don't mind. The defense, that would be the three officers, attorneys, are now on the stand. I mean, even as I speak. And the first officer that has been on the stand is Officer Salduti, I believe is how it's pronounced. And he actually said on the stand yesterday about Jordan Miles this. He probably did have a gun on him. Why? Again, what is that? What is that? Magical thinking, to be sure. He had a gun on him. This was a mysterious disappearing gun. This was a gun that, although apparently the police department looked at every square inch of every possible place that gun could have somehow disappeared, never found it. And that he, at this point, would still say he probably did have a gun on him. Suggests that Officer Salduti is incapable of dealing with reality. And then here's another interesting exchange. Given the fact that these cops say they did not use force that was over the top or potentially lethal or anything. They were doing exactly by the book what they were told to do. And Miles' attorney asked Salduti in cross-examination, did Officer Sisak, another one of the cops, say to you that he thought the kid was going to die? And Officer Salduti's response to that question, he did mention it. Okay, so these three cops have jumped the kid, beaten the crap out of him, although they say they really didn't. And actually one of them said afterwards that he was worried that the kid was going to die. Oh, yeah, he did mention it, but I was too busy looking for the invisible gun to pay much attention. Also, Officer Salduti says that neither he nor either of the two other cops hit Jordan Miles after he was handcuffed or pulled his hair out. Well, now that's really interesting because I've seen pictures of his head and there's these whole patches where the hair is gone. So what are they suggesting? During the scuffle, Jordan Miles pulled his hair out? And as Jordan Miles' attorney said, he said to Salduti, Ewing, and Sisak, the three cops, together, you are at least 630 pounds of man. And you guys are having a hard time restraining Jordan Miles? There's just, and has been from day one, too much stuff in this Jordan Miles case that you cannot ask a reasonable person to swallow. I wonder how Officer Salduti thinks his hair disappeared in clumps, along with the gun. It's all magic. I swear to God, if Jordan Miles does not get some justice here, I will just, I don't know. Here again. I'm just an idiot. I'm naive. Who would think that after doing what I do for a living for so long, I can still be naive? I still have within me this sense that, justice will prevail. Why do I think that? Sometimes it does, I guess, and then we hang on to those moments. I just don't want to get too cynical. Hey, here's something. It's good news. Here's some good news. And this comes from one of you, about one of you. This is Aaron, who's been listening to the show. Aaron, you needn't have said this. He says his 40th birthday is coming up in a few days, and he says he's been listening or watching me since, well, since he was a kid. Well, okay, I've been on TV or radio here for over 30 years. So, yeah, since you were a kid, you easily could have been subjected to me if you've lived in Pittsburgh. And Aaron has been an emailer. I've been aware of him out there, which is a wonderful thing when I have a sense of who my audience is, either because you call or you email or you write or whatever. And Aaron lost his job last year. And actually in January of last year, so he's been unemployed for over a year. And he says that he has always listened to the show. He's listened to it in San Francisco, in Atlanta, in Sarasota, in Chicago. He says he never misses it. And he says this, that in his unemployment, he created jobs for himself because there just weren't any out there. He created a job as a personal assistant. He cleaned houses. He was a maid. He was a houseboy. He worked at the Dormont Library for a few hours a week. But he just landed a job. And he's so excited. He acknowledges that it is for the evil empire. That would be UPMC. But we like him in this case because we want Aaron to take some of their money. And he said they even wanted to know where to assign my parking space. But he said he lost his car during his unemployment. Isn't that something? So he landed really on his feet, which is, you know, that's going against the norm. I understand. Isn't it that after you've been unemployed for at least a year, you become one of the chronically unemployed? And if you're about to celebrate your 40th birthday, you're getting into that scary age range where people are more loath to hire you if you've been unemployed for a while. So Aaron's broken out of all of that, and he just wanted to, I guess, let me know. And Aaron, I'm just thrilled. So, I'm sure I can speak for the entire audience in telling you we're thrilled. It's too bad it's UPMC, but then, the fact of the matter is, all of us, I think, essentially work for UPMC, don't we? I mean, if you live in UPMCville, which is how I think of Pittsburgh, UPMCburg, then, there's not even, at most, there's 1 degree of separation between any of us and UPMC. So we're all in thrall to it, and at least now you're going to be paid for it, which is fantastic. So happy to hear it. Let's get a break in here. If there's anything you guys want to talk about, let me know, because I'm not a mind reader, So you can call at 412-316-3381. You can text. You can text?
No.
They can't text.
No, they can't text.
Why can't they text? Because there's not a phone number. They have to do that to a phone. Jess is looking at me like, God, this old lady is an idiot. I get mixed up, okay? I didn't mean text. All right. I'm like reminds me of my grandmother when was talking long distance on the phone. She'd always scream because I think she thought it couldn't possibly be heard in Chicago if she didn't. All this newfangled technology is an embarrassment. You can email me, okay? I know. At lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And if you had my cell phone number, you could text me. But I ain't giving it out. Goodbye.
Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Laser Hair and Skin Center has been providing professional, affordable services for over 10 years. Now they're proud to exclusively offer RegenLite acne treatment. RegenLite is an FDA-approved, non-invasive drug, chemical, and pain-free treatment of all grades of acne. With RegenLite, you will experience a 50% improvement in less than 2 weeks, with lasting improvement for up to 12 weeks. Call the Laser Hair and Skin Center today at 412-373-1700 and receive $100 off your first session. Or go to mylaserhair.com for more information and to see their full line of services. The Laser Hair and Skin Center.
Pittsburgh City Paper is now available on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com to read this week's digital issue or search for restaurants, bars, concerts, events, and movies on any portable device. Plus blogs, Lynn Cullen, and Best of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Are you struggling with your mortgage payments? Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okie doke. From my Facebook page showing how out there I am, is a great comment from Don, who says, as a longtime listener and a Vietnam veteran, I want to thank you for reading the names of those killed in action during the Afghan war. I remain appalled how this nation is ignoring the true cost of this farce in the Middle East. We are more concerned about who will be the next judge on America's Got Talent. America may have talent, but we no longer have the passion and patriotism to protest the loss of our brave men and women in a mislabeled war that means nothing to our liberty and freedom. Well said, Don. Well said. I somewhere read today where someone said, how odd is it that there is no mention during the supposed presidential debate of the war? Do you hear the president talking about it? Not a word. Do you hear Mitt Romney talking about it? Not a word. So there is even this absolute silence about the sacrifice. And yet, both the president and Mitt Romney, in a moment, will exploit our men and women in uniform. They'll use them. Right? We all do that. We fall all over each other to, and I think, the sort of hyperbolic verbiage that we employ when we talk about them, calling them all heroes and things like that, which is just crap. Not everyone in a uniform is a hero. They aren't. Even in a volunteer army where it requires, an affirmative for somebody to stand up and say, all right, I realize that 99% of the people behind me won't do this. So I'll stand up and say, I will put my life on the line to protect them. You could argue that that is heroic. But what I'm saying is that each individual person in our military is there for their own individual reason. And some are heroes. Some are extraordinary people. The best, as we like to call them. The best and the brightest. And some are lost souls. And we know that. But to take a word which is meant to be something so hard to ever reach, hero, and to blanket it as if it belongs to you simply because you stand up and pledge to do something, it doesn't mean you did it. I'm sorry. They're not all heroes. But I'll put anybody who bothers to do that, if they're in their right mind, I'll give them the greatest respect, given the fact that they are saying, you see all these wusses behind me? You see all these self-centered, wouldn't dirty their hands, scaredy cats behind me? I will step forward, and yes, I will put my life on the line to protect them. I think that that is pretty much what it is, don't you? It's always interesting to me to hear people explain why they never would have occurred to them to join the military. No one ever says, well, maybe I don't know that, but no, I've never heard anybody flat out say, I don't want to die. Why didn't I join the military? Let's say I'll try to imagine that I'm young enough to join. I'll be honest. I, knowing my personality, think that I would literally become insane if I were forced into any kind of regimentation. I know myself. It's why I'm a loner. I can't... the whole idea of what an army is that you break down the individual and you create a unit, right? I understand that. And maybe I'm selling myself short. Maybe I'd be capable of doing it. I think if there was an absolute threat that I recognized, I could do it. I could. But no, my personality is such that I would really have a great deal of difficulty. I think I've always been worried about the physical trials of it. It looks like something that would make me sore. And have me throw up a few times and stuff. It looks really uncomfortable. The idea of wearing 150 pounds of gear in 110-degree temperatures, I know I would pass out. I'm not strong. I just don't think I'm strong enough in any way. I do not have the right body, the right mindset. I also, to be perfectly honest, I don't want to die. Here's the thing. I don't want to die in a war that I don't think is worth fighting. And the thing is when you sign on to the military, you lose the right to decide. You do whatever you're told. And I can see myself being courageous, even heroic perhaps, in a fight that I found to be just. But that would not have been the case for me in most of the wars that we've gone to, all undeclared in my lifetime. So that's why I don't. But if nobody did, where would we be? And I don't, and I know there's a socioeconomic thing. I've told you the story many times. I can never, you know how some stories will stay with you until the day you die? Do you know how when you talk to older people, how there's a, they tend to repeat themselves, that there are stories that they tell over and over and over again, because as your life begins to narrow, it condenses in a way. It seems to me. It condenses. And you've heard the phrase that as people get older, they just become more so of whatever it is they are. If you're a curmudgeon, you become more of a curmudgeon. If you're a good soul, you become more of a good soul. If your tendency is to be a complainer, you complain more, whatever. More so seems to be what it is. And I think it's because of what I think of as condensation, this just condensing of personality. But in that condensing, certain stories stick out for whatever reason. They have power, and we can't let them go. My father must have told the same, as he neared his end. I mean, you would hear these stories over and over again, and some of them didn't seem like that big a deal, and you'd wonder, why is that the story that in 87 years of life he needs to repeat over and over? But I can tell already at my advanced age that there are stories, moments that at the time didn't seem like anything. But you noted it. And then somehow, even though you forget a million gazillion other things that are said in your company, other things that you have said, other things that you have witnessed, some things never leave you. And that one time when I was driving my kid and his friend somewhere, and they were about 8, 9 years old, and I'm the mom in the front seat driving, and they're the two little guys in the back talking. And, parents overhear all kinds of interesting things when they're driving children around like that. And I heard an exchange that I've told you about it, I can't get it out of my head. Even though at the time I did react strongly, although I didn't say anything. I said something later to my son, but I didn't contradict the boy because I felt I'd be contradicting his parents, and I didn't think that was my place. But my son had said, I'm going to join the Army when I grow up. And the other little boy said to him, what? People like us don't join the Army. This is an 8-year-old boy. People like us don't join the Army. And that silenced my poor kid. He hadn't heard that before. But the other kid had. People like us don't join the Army. Now, to explain who that kid was, that kid had 2 parents, both professionals. Mother, an extraordinary researcher who I've even read things in the paper about. His father, a scientist. People like us don't join the Army. I said nothing. I took them to where they were going and they got out, but obviously couldn't get it out of my head. And when I got him alone again, I told him, I said, honey, I don't agree with that at all. And I wanted him to know that, but I don't know if I was supposed to say something at the time or not. It's not fair for somebody like me to do battle with an 8-year-old boy who'd been told that. So that's one of those stories that now is, 12, 13 years old, and it just stays in my head. Every time I read those names, it stays in my head. Every time I read those names, I think of this wonderful young man that my niece, Susan's daughter, loved. who was blown to pieces in Iraq? Because no one had told him that people like us don't serve. And here's how I know and I hear this from liberals a lot, and I just want to say, there's this sense among, it's not liberal so much as highly educated people, who can be the stupidest people in the universe. Highly educated people who have this sense of soldiers, of anyone who would join up, as being a dead-ender, somebody who had no other possibilities. Because why the hell would you do such a thing? Isn't that something? Why would you do such a thing if you had other possibilities? And that all that does is show a big hole in their character if they think that that's only a last resort of poor people, uneducated people, people who somehow fall outside the mainstream and can't get a leg up any other way, and they fall for the be all you can be and all this crapola and yada, yada, yada. There is a sense that the people who are in the military are idiots. I know. And it comes from highly educated people. My niece, believe me, would never have loved an idiot. She's bright as hell, and he was every bit her equal. Smart, whip smart. Marvelous writer. He, though, had been taught differently than that little 8-year-old in the back of my car. His father had been a Marine. He thought of it as something that a good person does. That it was the most honorable thing somebody could do. This kid could have gone straight off to one of the better colleges, and he could have been a hedge fund manager. But no. So don't tell me that our volunteer army is made up of a bunch of losers. There are losers in that army. And there are heroes, and there are brilliant people. They are not unlike us, except that many of them have a sense that they have a duty to their country and to the people in it. And that places them far above many, if not most, of us. By virtue of joining, they have done something selfless. Totally selfless. They've given up the right to determine their own fate, to determine where they will live, to determine if they will live or die, to make their own judgments. And we live in a culture that so elevates the individual that the idea of losing our individuality, as I can't imagine myself, is so strong that it in some ways impedes any sense of commonality, and certainly impedes any any desire, any willingness to give of ourselves, even our lives, for others that we might not know, or for the ideal of our nation and what it stands for, of that flag we salute. That's why the jingoistic crap that goes on in this country makes me crazy. All the people with their hands over their hearts who would never volunteer. The people who, as Dick Cheney had more important things to do. And more, the leadership of this country, the Congress of this country, is made up of men and women who never served and never would have considered it. And that is not to the good. I had no idea I was going to go off on this rant. That's what Don's Facebook thing did to me. Oh, well. Let me take a break. Let me give you a break.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on admission to the Science Center, History Museum, Carnegie Museums, area golf courses, and some of the best restaurants in Pittsburgh. bergbargains.com. Local deals, local merchants. bergbargains.com. Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay. Well, I was saying earlier that I'm naive, but that every once in a while I hold out the possibility that justice will prevail. I was talking in regard to the Jordan Miles civil suit. But yesterday, the Commonwealth Court, that's a panel of judges underneath the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court. Every state has its own setup when it comes to the judiciary, and I still don't quite get Pennsylvania's. But the Commonwealth Court is an appeals court, but it's underneath, I guess, the Supreme Court, Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And when the Marcellus Shale thing came upon us, you'll recall that Governor Corbett and the Republican legislature could not do enough to clear the way for the oil companies and gas companies to have at us wherever, whenever, whatever they wanted. And so they passed, this huge law, and part of it said that, let's say Mount Pleasant, it has zoning laws because, communities do. If Mount Pleasant has a zoning law that says we don't want a gas platform here, this is only for residences and stuff, Harrisburg and the governor happily signed a bill that said Mount Pleasant zoning laws, screw them. Anybody's Pleasant, anybody. It doesn't matter what little community you live in, you no longer have the right to decide where any oil company or gas company wants to drill. And so I'm sure you're aware that a bunch of these little towns got madder than hell. And a lot of them, interestingly, are run, these are conservative areas. These are the, suburban areas. And they're home to probably pretty conservative Republican types. Well, they went ballistic. And so you had these rather conservative little municipalities going nuts and wanting to take on the Republican legislature and Corbett. And they sued them, and they went to court. And yesterday, the Commonwealth Court ruled for the little guys. And they said that the state cannot require municipalities to allow drilling where they don't want it, where their zoning laws say no. Well, I got news for you. Right now, as we speak, I cannot imagine the kind of arm twisting and stuff that's going on. I was thinking to myself, are you still so naive as to think that now that this is going to head to the Supreme Court, it'll go to the Supreme Court? You can't openly lobby a Supreme Court justice. But what happens What happens when it gets into the judiciary here in these big guys with their tons of money? The cynical among you think that what? Money gets slipped to justices or things happen that would make them... I don't think that. Even in this unbelievably, ridiculously partisan, uber partisan times, I can't think that. I don't know. So I'm holding out hope that, in fact, the Supreme Court will agree. Now, I'm not sure what happens at our Supreme Court now that Justice Melvin, one of the Ori girls, is no longer on it. We now do not have an odd number of justices. We have an even number, which means you could end up with tie votes. And what happens? And I have no idea. I mean, that'd be assuming if there's, again, if justices vote in a totally political manner. But as I said, most of these places that brought suit, these municipalities, are hardly hotbeds of liberalism. These are conservative communities. So I guess we'll see. But anyway, that was a win. And I think a totally proper ruling. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just seeing something here that's totally another point. Back to the Olympics a little bit. They're saying how there's a piece on the front page of the Post-Gazette today that says that the Muslims in London are seeing this as a great opportunity to show off the cultural diversity and the cultural assimilation of Muslims in Great Britain. And the reporter, whose name I don't recall seeing before, is a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reporter, J. Brady McCullough, says that he went in to see the media officer at the East London Mosque, who is a 26-year-old, and he describes him thusly. He sat in his second-floor office wearing khaki capri pants and sandals. Good. Jess reacted like I wanted her to. Jess is laughing. Jess... Jess! Have you ever heard of a man wearing capri pants? Jess, she can't talk. She's laughing too hard. No! So but the guy who wrote it can't possibly know what capri pants are. What's he talking about? Do you think now capris are something women wear that are like, back in the day, my grandmother and I called them pedal pushers. Uh-huh. So they're below the knee.
Mm-hmm. They're tighter pants.
And you think they're tighter? I don't know that. Okay, capris maybe tighter and below the knee. Well, what is he thinking? Capris, khaki capris. No guy is wearing capris. And who edited this? Another guy who wouldn't know a capri pant if it bit him? I mean, that is the funniest thing. I couldn't go on. You know, you see something like that and you're finished. Because it puts a picture in your head that's so ridiculous you can't see straight. I didn't know that the mosque would have like a transvestite as their media officer. Those are women's clothes. It also says something here that brought a few things to mind. It's Ramadan. And that, of course, is that very, very stringently holy religious month where Muslims the world over engage in something that is unfathomable to most Christians. They really fast. Okay, we got a caller. Hello?
Hey, Lynn.
Yeah.
It's PJ from Greensburg.
PJ, hi.
I will have you know that when you say men's capri pants,
Yeah.
I think of many, many, many photos I've seen from the 1950s.
What?
Of men wearing capri pants, in particular beatniks and artists.
What?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, you know what? I'm going to go online. I'm going to send you a picture. I've seen lots of pictures of them. And I think there might be a movie in which, what's his name? Cary Grant wears them.
Where who? Cary Grant?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you sure you're not talking about knickers?
No, they're not knickers. I know the difference. Believe it or not, I'm a heterosexual man, and I do know the difference between capris and knickers.
Do you think that this Islamic gentleman in London was wearing capri pants?
Well, I understand completely what you're saying, that the reporter misidentified him, but, London's who knows what chic is in London right now? Excuse the pun. It speaks about Islam and chic, but hey, and they may not be. I mean, are there not varying degrees of capri height on the leg?
No. Jess says absolutely not. Though I would say they're about no more than 2 inches below the knee. Is that correct, Jess?
I'd say that's about right.
Yeah, that's about right, she says.
No, see, I've seen capris that go lower than that. They're like mid-calf.
Those are clam diggers.
So the variation might be that the reporter, instead of saying capri, should have said clam digger.
But even clam diggers would be a little odd. Whatever. Okay, you send me some photos. I want to see.
Okay,
all
bye.
All right, PJ, bye. So anyway, this other thing that came up in the course of this this story about the guy in the capri pants is that it's Ramadan, and I can't imagine how hard Ramadan must be. Okay, because I was up pretty early this morning, and yet the sun had already risen. So if I were Muslim, I was thinking to myself, good God, I would have lost the opportunity to eat or drink a thing until the sun set, which, as you know, is over 12 hours. When Catholics say we fast, what do you mean? Or like Lent, we do this. Yeah, right. You give up one food item or something. This is stringency in religion. For 1 month, they do not eat or drink. That means you don't drink water. Nothing passes your lips. Here's what I want to know. How do all these Olympic athletes who are Muslim, how can they compete? That's what I want to know. How do they compete? I mean, fine, they can compete, but they're competing at an extraordinary disadvantage. Is it possible that some religious higher up gives them dispensation? I don't know. I know among Jews when there is a fast day, and Jews too fast like this, nothing. I mean, nothing. You can't take a sip of water. You can't anything. If you chew on a fingernail, you've broken the fast. So, but if, like, a person is old or a person has to take medication, I know the rabbis have said you take the medication. You do what you have to do to keep it. God doesn't want you to die. I mean, you do that. But this Muslim Ramadan is unbelievable to me. How hard it must be. So tip your hat to any Muslims you know, who and feel for them. In the heat of this summer, during daylight, with the sun shining on them, and think of where Muslims live, in the hottest parts of the world, and you can't drink? Wow. Again, I tip my hat. I'm blown away. But there was another little thing in here that I'd never heard before. They also can't have sex during daylight, sunrise to sundown. Do not eat, do not drink, do not have sex. Boy, I'll tell you, right around sundown, go over to the Islamic Center because there's a whole bunch of stuff happening. I mean, they're eating, they're drinking, I can't imagine. You must have to get up very early to have a good meal in you that can take you through the day. At the longest days of the calendar. Wow. And the hottest days of the calendar. That, to me, is unbelievable. Okay, and just one more note that I saw in perusing the papers today, and then I'll let you go. This, again, boils my blood. This voter ID thing just continues to enrage me. A study's been done. It's Allegheny County that has the highest rate of eligible voters who do not have acceptable voter ID according to this despicable law that the Republicans passed. As many as 18.7%, we'll round that up, 20%, 1 out of 5 voters in Allegheny County who are eligible will not be able to vote. If this is constitutional, then I am Muslim, okay? Guess what the second region is that is most going to be hit by this? Oh, shock, it's Philadelphia. 17.8% of their voters are eligible but do not have the right requirements. Now, let us think about how politics work in Pennsylvania. The only way Democrats win elections in Pennsylvania statewide is because Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, those are where the Democrats live. If you think these Republicans didn't know what they were doing when they did it, you got to be out of your cotton-picking minds. Carville's famous thing about Pennsylvania is Philadelphia and Pittsburgh with Alabama in between. This law hardly touches Alabama, but it really knocks the crap out of Philly and Pittsburgh. If this thing is constitutional, again, I almost was going to say I'm a horse's ass, but too many people would agree with that, so I couldn't say. That's not right. It's unbelievable. Okay, that's it. I'm done. I have injected and ejected and enough bilious fluids to finish me off for the week. Next week, I think we got the full complement of folks in. Our regular weekly guests all will be here, and I should be as well. Have a great weekend, and see you Monday.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.